We've seen 52 arrests of protesters, a mixture of people protesting on behalf of Republic, the anti-monarchy campaign, as well as Just Stop Oil and probably a couple of Extinction Rebellion in there for good measure. Why not? Now, I'm unsure about this because on the one hand, I think we need to have freedom to protest in this country. We are a liberal democracy. The King indeed ensures that we have those freedoms to live freely in England. But, on the other hand, the police have a pretty tough job to do. They need to keep this show on the road. They need to keep the coronation going, the procession clean, to allow the millions and millions of people in Britain and across the world to enjoy the spectacle. So I'm not sure what I think, but I want to get the views of Toby Young, who is the director of the Free Speech Union, because he said, it's a pity the organisers of the Republican protest have been arrested. The right to protest peacefully is fundamental to the British way of life and should be celebrated today along with everything else we value about our society. So Toby is just going to join us very quickly now. Toby, please can you tell us why it was wrong for the police to stop these protesters?
Well, it felt a little bit heavy-handed, Emily. I mean, we don't know exactly what intelligence the police had and exactly what the protesters were planning to do. But according to the organisers of Republic, at least, they talked to the police. They'd explained to the police what they wanted to do. It was going to be a peaceful protest. They weren't going to disrupt any of the processions or the ceremony. So it did feel a little bit over the top to arrest them for fear that they might disrupt proceedings. I think had they disrupted the proceedings, then it would have been fair to arrest them. But until they did so, I think it would have been better to have let the protest go ahead. After all, the right to protest peacefully, is one of the things we value about our democratic society. And it's one of the things, I think, amongst many other things, that should have been celebrated today.
Yeah, I completely understand that. But do you think there might be, just quickly, do you think there might be an argument, considering the fact we've seen Just Stop Oil, Extinction Rebellion, blockade roads, stick their hands with glue to the road, cause mass disruption? Do you think there is an argument to say that the police had to go in, preempt possible disruption, otherwise it would have been total chaos and ruined the day for potentially millions of people?
Well, I think I take a nuanced position on this, Emily, which is I can understand why the police wouldn't have wanted to take any risks with Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil, given their antics. We wouldn't have wanted them locking themselves to railings, throwing themselves in front of royal carriages and so forth. So I think maybe that was understandable. But the Republican protesters, as far as I understand it, just wanted to hold up yellow placards saying, "Not our king." I don't in any way sympathise with their position, but I do defend their right to protest.
Well, there you go. The perfect liberal response there from Toby. Toby, we'll keep you in the discussion, but we'll come back to the panel as well to get their views. Who shall I go to? Patrick, do you have any sympathy for...
No. No, I don't, because what people are forgetting about all of this is that there is a precedent that's been set for this kind of police activity, and that relates to football hooliganism. And so if you had a group of people who happen to all have Millwall shirts on, who were there going, "I'm going to go and shout and scream a little bit," then you would unquestionably, through the use of facial recognition technology like the police used in this case now, have had the police preemptively act. And with this lot as well, I interview people at Just Stop Oil on a regular basis, and I know that this lot was Republic as well as other groups believed to be involved. They do see themselves as modern-day suffragettes. What did the suffragettes do? Threw themselves in front of the King's horse. It would not be beyond the realms of possibility that something like that could have happened today. I also just think it was in poor taste. I understand that there's a need for freedom of speech, etc. But if the police thought through intelligence that there was a realistic possibility that there would be a serious incident, and I think it is reasonable to suspect there would have been, they were right to get them lifted.
There could have been it could have caused some violence, though, Benjamin, couldn't it, if the anti-monarchy protesters had majorly disrupted the procession? You might have seen some monarchists get a little outraged. There could have been a brawl.
Look, I'll say a couple of things. Patrick, and makes a reasonable point about it could have been intelligence that suggested it wasn't as innocent as was claimed in the viral videos of them being hauled off. Now, I would say that makes a slippery slope argument, because if police don't have to provide any indication or intelligence that they had any justification, right, and if we don't see the evidence for that, then actually that's giving police officers a blank cheque to remove protesters when they like it or not, probably with the awareness of the Home Secretary in advance with an occasion like this. So I think that would worry me. But also, you think about pride marches, for example, in central London. You know, you have had what I would call anti-trans protesters at those. Police don't behave in that way at all. So, you know, how can it be one rule for an occasion like this and another for others? I think the right to protest is fundamental. And the quick third thing I'd say is that, you know, there were loads of police officers in regular clothes all over that route, chances are, and so I'd like to see them fling themselves in front of the horse. I suspect they'd get stopped.
Albie, are the Conservatives becoming terribly authoritarian? You know, this new public order bill, they want to clamp down on absolutely everything that could be disruptive.
I think we are in danger of creeping into tolerating behaviour from the government and from the state which is more authoritarian. And you can't say, Patrick, as we have debated many times on this channel, that free speech is under threat, and then say something as ridiculous as, I understand the need for free speech, but... No, I'm quite evangelical on this stuff. I don't think the protesters should have been arrested before they did anything wrong. And we should employ evidence-led policing, but the evidence that I have seen is that these are Republicans wanting to protest at a coronation, which I believe has happened at every coronation.
Well, they still were allowed to protest, but obviously they took people away that were too close to the procession, I think. Toby, just to get your last thoughts on this, do you think there are double standards at play when it comes to policing of protests, or indeed the reaction to when police arrest people? You know, we've seen people arrested for rude tweets.
Yeah, well, that's obviously completely unacceptable, Emily. One of the reasons we might have been given the impression of double standards is that the police now have new powers under the Public Order Act, which they didn't have before. So they weren't able to do this as easily before. We were promised when the Public Order Act was going through Parliament that these new powers would be used proportionately. They wouldn't be used to excess. They wouldn't be used to suppress peaceful protests. So I think today's behaviour, the arrest of these protesters before they'd engaged in any disruptive activity, is a warning and not a good one.
Well, there you go, some food for thought. Thanks, Toby Young, for joining us on the Saturday 5. Now, we're just going to read out a police statement to see what they've got to say. They said, over the past 24 hours, there has been a significant police operation after we received information protesters were determined to disrupt the coronation procession. Protest is lawful and it can be disruptive. We have policed numerous protests without intervention in the build-up to the coronation and during it. So they're saying this was exceptional circumstances.